Here we are again. Welcome to another Continuing Conversations. I'm Michael Dismuke, lead writer for Captain's Log RPG, freelance writer for Star Trek Adventures RPG, in addition to being a fiction writer of all sorts with some cool stuff coming in the future. But you'll hear about that in future episodes. But right now, let me go ahead and introduce my partner in crime, Jim Johnson.
Hey everybody, Jim Johnson, project manager at Modiphius on Star Trek Adventures, Captain's Log, Fallout 2D20, and other stuff that you'll be seeing coming up in the weeks and months and years to come. Also a fiction writer like Michael, also a nonfiction writer like Michael, because we just recently had essays published in a book by Jason Kaufman and Aaron Peterson. More about that later, but my copy arrived today, so I was just excited about that. I don't have it handy, so I can't show it off, but essays on Star Trek, leadership, and my particular essay was all about using RPGs to support leadership training. And Michael, I haven't read yours yet, but plug yours briefly.
Title of Humans Cannot Survive as a Species Without Extraterrestrial Interference. That was my academic paper.
There you go. And we have a very special guest with us tonight. I'll have him introduce himself. Peter, go ahead and introduce yourself, sir.
Hello, I'm Peter Norton. I have a solo roleplay channel, Hollowponds Solo Sagas, and I have been writing solo supplements to assist people in playing solo games, which are out there and to be used. And I have been playing Captain's Log for 11 or 12 weeks now.
That's super cool. Yeah, I've seen your posts on Facebook and elsewhere, and just super exciting to see that, Michael, this little game that we made a couple years ago, still going strong, still getting fans. Good. People having fun with it. It's just so exciting. It's so rewarding to see all the cool stuff that people are doing. And I talked about it 2 years ago, how it was kind of self-serving, because I love reading Star Trek science. I love reading Star Trek fiction and stories, and so making this game with Michael was a way to make other people make more Star Trek stories. So I was like, yes, my master plan.
You can definitely see that in the book. It was one of the things I said in one of the early episodes. The love for Star Trek oozes out of those pages. It's very clear how much detail and how much love went into that book.
I'm glad you can see that, because there is a huge love in that book. So as is our tradition on this show, new guests always get to tell us if they so choose. So far, I don't think anybody's refused yet, but you don't have to do it. But we always encourage you to tell us what your favorite Star Trek series is. And if you can, narrow it down to just one, who your favorite Star Trek character is.
It's very difficult to say series because I'm very flighty, but I've just finished watching Lower Decks, and I really quite enjoyed Lower Decks. I thought I was quite disappointed it ended, because I thought it had legs for there was more stories there to tell, quite easily more stories there to tell. Quark, probably, as a character.
Yeah.
I think I quite enjoyed Quark and the stories around him, and the whole of Deep Space Nine I thought was also quite underrated as a platform and a series of stories. But yeah, Lower Decks, I really enjoyed those, particularly all the discussions over the hollow suites and the cleaning of them afterwards. I thought that was very good, because I'd always there was a running joke at home about one episode where Voyager, where Janeway turns to Chakotay and says, she's getting lonely, and Chakotay suggests using the holosuites to fulfill that emptiness. And the way the very seedy way that he said it always came across that way. And then to have that mentioned in Lower Decks, I felt very vindicated that it wasn't just my own mind that created that.
And if you really like Quark, have you had a chance to catch the Delta Flyers podcast, where Armin Shimmerman they're reviewing episode by episode Deep Space Nine with Bobby Duncan McNeil, who Tom Paris, and Ensign Kim, Garrett Wang. But Armin comes on and talks about his character and the development of it. So if you love Quark, you probably want to get into Delta Flyers. Cool. It's a cool podcast. Cool. Yeah. Very good. So I came across Peter because, again, just like Jim, I was watching your YouTube videos on Captain's Log. Really, really enjoying watching them. I put it on at 1.25 speed so I can go through and catch all the story as soon as possible. But one of the things me and Jim had talked about early on, we have had, like, say, Trevor Duvall on the show who plays Me, Myself, and Die, and he had this high production thing, and me and Jim were like, that's kind of intimidating. We don't want people to think that you have to do that in order to enjoy solo RPG. So I really like your presentation style, because you're sitting there, you're rolling it up, you're just telling the story as you go. And I was like, oh, well, we got to have Peter on the show to talk about that, since people are still getting into Captain's Log. So before we get into the details about Captain's Log, why don't you give us a little bit of background about yourself? What's your storytelling story, basically? How did you get into RPG?
And so getting into RPGs occurred. So I'm 53. So getting into RPGs occurred a very, very long time ago now. And that was, I mean, I think the first thing was the Choose Your Own Adventure books, the Fantasy Flight, Steve Jackson books, was my first voyage into it. And then my mum was at university at the time and took me in, me and my brother in, and some of her friends, she did computing, some of her friends were role players, and they introduced us to role playing. And so then, there's as I said, the fancy game that shall not be mentioned. That then was a gateway to various things. But so role playing has just been a long tail thing. But I think my storytelling technique, and particularly as you'll see the way I approach Captain's Log, is because I'm a Generation X, a child of television. I think of stories in that scene by scene. I'm creating a TV series, particularly on my own. When I DM'd and I ran, then you've got narrative, you've got collaborative storytelling, so you can't take your own way. But I think if you tell stories in that scene by scene setup, it makes the overall arc a lot easier to formulate in your head. And I think that's why I like that simplistic fixed camera pointing at my face and telling a story. And I also think, so there are a lot of solo role players that I call hands solo role players. You just see their hands, and there's a lot that a face tells you in a story, and there's a lot that a face communicates, I think, is important to that thing. Did that answer all the question?
That did. I wanted to hear that
cool.
journey
That's
that you took into that.
Cool.
And then if you don't mind saying, what's your profession? Is it related to storytelling at all?
So I've had a variety. So I am one of those people who has switched profession quite often. I went to university and I did applied physics, and then I left that and became a school teacher. And I left that and became an engineering consultant. And then I left that and became a web developer. And then I left that and became a back-end coder. And then I've become what's called a Scrum Master, which is more of a sort of a sociological leader. I've done counseling, I've done plumbing, I've done painting and decorating, I've done stand-up comedy. I did that for a bit in 22. And so I've done lots of things, but I always used to say in meetings, I like the sound of my own voice. And so I do like a bit of showmanship and a bit of performing and a bit of storytelling. And I make up voices and I do things at home. And so it's just an extension of that is the showmanship element of it.
Okay. And so if you had to say why for you Captain's Log hits a sweet spot, and if you had to tell people about it, why would you tell them to get into solo RPG? Some people are uncomfortable with it, but you're doing improv, I see.
Yeah.
Comedy and all this stuff.
Yeah.
But how do you get into the comfort zone for it?
So I think there's various things. So those taking that as two questions, one Captain's Log and one as the solo role play and the comfort. So starting with the solo role play and the comfort, I think it's giving yourself. So I think creativity is incredibly important to us as human beings, and being creative and allowing ourselves to express that creativity is very important to have a decent world to live in. Expressing that creativity, and part of that is giving yourself that freedom and giving yourself the ability to express that creativity in whatever way that formulates, and not feeling self-conscious, particularly with solo play. Because if you're in a room on your own and you want to tell this funny voice and become a pirate, it's fine. There's no one there to judge you. And the person who really should give you the freedom is you. You shouldn't judge yourself. You should on your own be a judgment-free zone and be able to explore those thoughts that you have, and not feel guilty for it. And just, so if you want to solo role play or talk out loud or come up with a fun, you should be free to do that. Now I can switch to Captain's Log. The bit of the Captain's Log that when I first started getting, like, I got given the book and I had it for ages, and then I read it, and it was not quite what I was expecting, because lots of other games guide you with a framework, and Captain's Log kind of has a very, very thin framework, and it's far more of a narrative game than a lot of the others, which when you think about it with Star Trek is so infitting. A Star Trek episode, I mean, how many of our key characters in Star Trek have actually Carctec because of they've died? It's very few, because you don't have that kind of, it's a different story you're telling. It's not about combat and dying and rolling a natural 20 and doing double damage. It's about the story and the arc of the story, and particularly the way you've set it up with the 3 acts and the 5 scenes in each one. It really does lead to that story progression, and it's a very cool platform to let your creativity out and your narrative flow out to tell that. And so your framework is more how to tell a story than how to run a combat or how to min-max a character. It's how to tell a story, which is then gives you that lovely narrative flow that a lot of games miss out on because they focus too much on the max capacity to carry and how far you can run in 5 seconds.
We've heard about that quite a bit, right, Jim? I think you mentioned that before.
Yeah, I think, I mean, even now with 2 years, 3 years into it, there's still comments online from folks that are like, oh, Captain's Log is a narrative storytelling tool. It's not a game. It's like, but I mean, it is a game. It's just not the kind of game you were probably expecting, right? I mean, there is randomness to it. There are dice rolls. There is the probability matrix. There is uncertainty that you have to resolve. It's just, I think, Peter, you really got at it. It's not focused on combat. It's not focused on XP and gaining loot and doing the typical thing you might do in an RPG, even in a solo RPG. And but it's different because it's really trying to tell a Star Trek story, and to tell a Star Trek story, you need a little bit of uncertainty, but you also need that framework, right? You need that scene framework that you said you grew up on. I grew up on.
Yeah.
We're the Star Wars generation. We're the Star Trek television. I mean, really, there's so much great television in our generation.
Yeah, it really was.
And like, I can't get away from it. Like, I constantly think in scenes, even when I'm writing my fiction. It's always scene, and it builds. It's really hard to, and like, even when I'm writing, I really struggle to write standalone stories because I think in series, right? I'm always thinking in either series arcs or series chunks of series, etc. So everything you're saying, I'm totally right there with you, man.
Yeah.
Way. But yeah, Michael, I think it's hard for me to read some of those comments, and it's like, how is it not a game? I mean, there's so many different types of games and ways to game. I worry sometimes that some of those comments are like, they veer toward the one true wayism, right? It's like, this is the way a solo game should be. And if it's not in this neat little box, then it's not really a solo game. It's a narrative tool or something.
Well, I think the audience has decided, since it's selling pretty well. So apparently they think
I hate to use that as a potential, though, because sure, it's whatever you want it to be. It's still selling copies. Who cares?
And then Peter, when you're designing your solo, when you're crafting your solo Captain's Log game, how do you draw from Star Trek themes and lore? Like, how, what would we see if we're watching?
So I think one of the keys, particularly for solo play, and not so much for if you're a group player. So if you're dealing for a group, you do have to craft a story, because you have everybody that you have to take into account and their own desires for how they like to play. But because you're on your own, you can fall face first into the improv quite happily. And so my crafting of the story happens in milliseconds, as I roll a dice and I decide an option and I go, and then decide what to do next. So really, so this is, I said to you earlier, if you watch my videos, you are actually seeing my imagination process happening in real time. And so it's what Jim just said. I am leaning upon my 50 odd years of media consumption, the stories I've read, the TV series I've watched, and so not just Star Trek. Because if I was only to draw upon Star Trek, I would, not that Star Trek isn't very deep and has a lot of stuff, but it still would be relatively thin. So I have to draw upon other sources of media as well, and it doesn't have to be sci-fi; it can be anything.
Well, yeah.
So sometimes we say, yeah.
And Star Trek draws off every media. I mean, I'm so proud to just watch it. Strange New Worlds this season, 5 episodes, completely different, and it's just like, they're doing such a good showcase as to why gaming is fun, because you can make it for whoever your audience is around the table. What do you want? Horror? Fine, we'll do horror. What do you want? Dungeon crawl? Okay, we'll do dungeon crawl. It's really cool.
So we're planning. That's the one series that I haven't actually watched of Star Trek. I know it's a sacrilege, and I'm actually admitting to the outside world, but I haven't actually seen that series. But we've planned to, because we're moving to Belgium, so all of our DVDs and everything media is all being packaged up and being put into a massive ship to go on a cruise for 3 months and drink Mai Tais and play shuffleboard. Whereas we then are relying upon streaming services, and so we're planning on Strange New Worlds being one of the things we're going to fill our time with when we have an empty house for 2 months.
Nice. Michael, this is a non sequitur, but I just realized that, as I just had an idea for another show. At some point, we should get together and talk about what genres of television show has Star Trek not attempted an episode.
I'm writing it down.
I don't think we've seen a police procedural yet.
Yeah, we have.
Yeah.
With Odo for sure.
Yeah, Deep Space Nine. Deep Space Nine definitely did that.
More the, like the PI investigator. I'm thinking more like, group of security officers having their morning roll call, and then they go off and they investigate crimes, and they have their coffee klatch, and then some dramatic thing happens, and they're dealing with it, and then they all come together in the locker room afterwards. So I don't know that we had that. And then the other one I was thinking was like broad sketch comedy, and this is my roots, growing up watching Monty Python. It's like I don't think Star Trek has done, other than maybe Lower Decks, hasn't done like broad humor sketch comedy type of stuff. I think unintentionally they do.
Comedy, that was one of the things that I thought was very refreshing about Lower Decks, was that it fully embraced the comedy that is actually in Star Trek. Because sometimes, I mean. I know this is about Star Trek, but sometimes it takes itself very seriously. And really, Lower Decks just said we don't have to do that. We can still be canon, we can still be true, we can still be faithful and honest and show the love for this, but you can see the comedy in it at the same time. And so that I think is definitely a thing that could be explored further.
Yeah, for sure. And boy, I tell you, from a writing standpoint and from a storytelling standpoint, I think any episode of Lower Decks is a great case study, because those episodes are only like 22, 24 minutes, and they pack a lot of story into a little bit of time. I mean, a lot of it's broad humor, goofy stuff that's happening, but there, especially in the last 3 seasons, there's so much stuff going on. There's so many through lines happening, and it all comes together. And it's like, how did they pack that into 20 minutes and be a stupid, goofy, funny show at the time that's also super reverent to Star Trek? It's that old story about how many plates can you keep spinning in the air? It's like it's all going full speed. It's just amazing to watch. Anyway, non sequitur over. Sorry.
No, that's good. And if we were, Peter, if we were watching your 8 episodes in now, I think we're taping 8 or 9, August. I think. We're taping this in August, but you're about 8. What genre or what would people see? Like, what's your story? I like actually hearing about the captains and the ships. So just give us a 2-minute Netflix blurb on what we see if we watch it.
I'm learning. What I imagine. So basically, I've been doing a job, and they had a workplace change, and I was mapped from one role to a different role. So though I'm a Scrum Master, I was mapped to something else, and so I would still be trying to do my leadership in the way of the Scrum Master, though I was doing these other things at the same time. And I was trying to imagine somebody who wanted to be an engineer, but was given a job as a captain because they did some good stuff. And that's and within Star Trek, and I hadn't seen Lower Decks yet. It was when I started doing it that someone said, "Oh, I really should watch." And I thought, hold on, this is pretty much. It's the same thing as I did a costume drama type one, and I realised I just told the story of Bridgerton without actually ever seeing it yet. I've been doing that with Captain. So my captain is Captain Matane, because I'm learning Dutch because we're moving to Belgium. And so Meteen means immediately in Dutch. On the USS Rumta, and Rumta in Dutch means space or room. And so our captain is slightly on the sarcastic side and the peeved side because he just wants to do engineering and go and fit subspace relay. I also thought with subspace communication and subspace relays, surely someone's got to put those subspace relays in to a location to allow that communication to go. So someone's job is to go out. It's the same as the ones that lay communication cables across the ocean. Someone's job is to go out and maintain those subspace relays. And that is Captain Matane's job, who is quite happy doing that. And his crew's quite happy. And he doesn't really want to go and investigate Asian technology or resolve diplomatic problems or find a missing ship and a missing crew who's trying to do first contact. He wants to fit subspace relays and make sure they're working properly and keep the communication networks going properly, because that's his passion and his love.
I love reluctant captains, because then as a writer, you're forced to really get creative with those inciting incidents.
And so that's basically the premise that I came up with, and then I used the tables within the book to create stories and think, how can I pivot this within that viewpoint and that framework of somebody and a crew who is all behind their captain, they all just want to go off and do engineering jobs. So the latest story that I just finished recording, they discover it ends up being, not to give the story away, everyone, sorry, a sentient lichen, which means that they might be getting first contact, and they really don't want to do it because they're meant to be scanning an area to place a subspace relay, and they get these technological signals that shouldn't be there, and then they find this sentient, and they're like, oh, can't we just do our job? Do we have to keep doing? And it's quite fun having that reluctant discovery and the reluctant bit. So I've basically been approaching it from that angle to try and not try to be a bit different, and to have an avenue for comedy basically is also part of how I often approach the stories.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great idea, because I mean, like all the main series, right? It's about the bold captain and crew going out, exploring new things, exploring this, that, and the other thing, and you don't really think about what about the officers and captains who are just like, I'm happy to serve. I got my niche. I'm doing my thing. I don't need to go explore new planets. Exactly like you're saying, and how fun! Like what a great idea to have a captain who's like, or could grow to become like the accidental first contact specialist, right? Like he or she didn't ask for it. Like it just kind of stumbled into it, because I was out there on the frontier setting up a subspace network relay system for these new sectors that we're exploring, kind of like being like the support, like Starfleet Corps of Engineers out there trailblazing, setting up paths for the bold explorers to go exploring.
Yeah.
But you're on the front lines, so you're accidentally doing all the first contacts, and like the Picards and the Janeway. Oh man, he's already been here. I love that. Love that switch around of the traditional expectation of the Star Trek captain. I love it.
Yeah, I dream of doing a solo.
I did say that he's.
Oh, go ahead.
A solo HR. So how I'd set it up, because it's the time zone was the original series. At one point, I think it was one of the early captain's log entries. He complains about having to follow her behind Kirk and sort out various different child maintenance contracts and various other stuff like that. Because of course they're going off on their flight, and he's trailing behind, placing subspace relays to try and make sure the communications can come back.
Yeah, that's very cool. Yeah, I think everyone could just kind of play their own, try to be, I was saying, like, I've always wanted to do HR or administration for Star Trek. It's some outpost where we just push paperwork and file reports and stumble into it. I think that would be so hilarious. Even if it's cleaning up other messes you see on other TV shows, it's like, oh, what was how did you have to deal with that, errant Starfleet officer or errant ambassador when they came back to Starfleet? Like, how do you discipline them and reprimand them? Like, I think that would actually be kind of its own form of Lower Decks.
Mm-hmm. That's really funny, Michael. It makes me think of what was it? Captain Uhura, right, on the Leonda Grants. She went to her ship. Her mission was to explore the what was it, the lower Magellanic Cloud, and she came back with like 100 first contacts.
Yes.
So who's her HR rep saying, please stop? Like I'm swamped. I'm way behind on cataloging all these first contacts. Can you just like do an extended layover and have shore leave or something so I can catch up?
Yeah. That's
a great idea.
And then
I think that's where Captain's Log as a game tool and as a role playing tool really excels, because it doesn't give you just one pathway or one genre or one time zone. It basically says, here are the tools, tell the story you want to tell. And I think that's where people can embrace their own personal story and twist that personal story into a Captain's Log and a Star Trek story. They don't have to stick with the things that other people have done. They can tell their own story of their own life if they need to.
Yeah, and for those of maybe are tuning in, this is their first time hearing about Captain's Log. It's also can be collaborative. I know last night was my TTRPG game, but only one player could go because everyone else got sick. And I said, instead of pulling a mission, let's do a Captain's Log. And we had mountain bikes, wind whales, volcanic activity, and Nausicaan assassins, all from that. And we had the most hilarious game that was just really fun. So you can do it collaboratively and get together and kind of roll together. And it was this person's first time playing. They wanted to join the game. I said, okay, well, we'll do a session 0 and I'll show you some mechanics. And we ended up wrapping up the whole game in about 2 hours. And again, I transcribe as I go along, so it's something he'll be able to enjoy for years to come. When he reads it back. Now, go ahead, Jim.
I was curious. You mentioned it briefly, Peter, before we continue talking. For folks who haven't had an opportunity to tune in to your show yet, I'm curious. In addition to Captain's Log, are there any other tools you use? Like, can you talk a little bit? Are there other games, other tools, other oracles? Like, what else do you use to actually play through your Captain's Log, or are you just using Captain's Log?
So I use a verb chart that I made. So of 100 verbs. Is it 100 verbs or 20? No, 20, because you've got a D20 at the table anyway. So I use a verb chart for 20 and some nouns, just that I just pulled together from other ones. I hadn't thought of using, but Michael mentioned there's Starforged has a large quantity of sci-fi orientated verb tables, which I will be starting to use. But the only problem is my Starforge books are at the moment in a box, sellotaped up and inventoried, so I can't get them out. But next year, I'm planning on redoing Captain's Log as Series 2, because again, I always think in series. I always think in episodes and series and arcs and stories in series. I will be using those. So only in Captain's Log, at the moment, pretty much I'm just using the one book. There's enough matrix in there and enough other things that even if you don't use the whole sentence that comes out of the matrix and just some of the words or the vibe that comes from that, there's enough in there that you can actually pull out.
And we cut a lot out too. We had a lot more.
I could imagine. Yeah. But it's just because of the other solo games, and if you do, I'll push myself. If you do want to visit the channel, you can see me play all sorts of solo games in all sorts of genres.
Can we talk about that for a second? Can you go ahead and talk about what we would see and drop the link? Yeah, we'll drop the link in, but let people know where to find it. Yeah.
So I've played. I've been playing. So you do know Lancer, the mech combat game. I've played that solo, which is really mainly a skirmish game. I've had Twilight 2000. I've done Alien, Starforged. I haven't done so fantasy wise. We've had Morkborg. We've had Dragonbane. I've played Forbidden Lands. Forbidden Lands is awesome solo. It's a very, very well constructed solo game. More recently, I've started doing a Daggerheart campaign and playing through Daggerheart, mainly because it's quite popular. And I've written some guides for it, which means I can make some money off of that, being frank and transparent. And so, but basically lots of games. So I have, which you may be able to tell from that many games, I have ADHD. And so my attention span can last a series. And then I want to play something different for a bit. But I might come back to the series. More than likely I will. But being able to do series of short runs instead of just a continuous and know there's an ending to this series that I'm working towards actually allows you to cap stories and build arcs of stories that are quite satisfying to tell. Because some of the problems, sometimes, sorry to segue into something else, sometimes I think when you have a long tail that you don't know where it's going to end, your story can sometimes get a bit meandery and lost. And it's always nice to know that you've given yourself a cap, a duration. And so at the moment, it's around 15 to 20 episodes of solo play, particularly as they're all about half an hour to 45 minutes. Gives you enough story that you can actually get a nice arc of story coming out with a nice ending at it. So then I'll switch to a different game to try and keep my palate cleansed and refreshed through.
And the way you're logging all these is just on video, right? You're not typing them out. Your video.
Yeah. So it's all
log, right?
So yeah. So it's all just on video. I take notes. I have a journal where I take notes, but I have very scrappy. I should have been a doctor. I have very scrappy handwriting and just write in bullet points. And I don't then type them afterwards. And I always have to leave a note. And this is so as a solo player, I'll advise other solo players when you finish a session, leave yourself a note to say how to start a hook for your next session. Don't leave yourself without a hook to go into, because you'll come to the table, you'll look at it and you go, what did I do? What was happening next? And then you can stall. So it's always good to write down a little hook for what your next session is going to be.
Oh man, we have to have you back just to talk about hooks and how to do that. We love talking. We break down little like story mechanics, and that would be actually a really cool.
I have lots of opinions on storytelling and story mechanics and how to do story arcs. I quite enjoy that aspect of it. But yeah, so that's.
Yeah. And what's the website again? What's the best way to find you?
So since April, I'm all over the internet. Hollowponds Solo Sagas. So it's the channel on YouTube. You can find me on Facebook, Hollowponds Solo Sagas. Instagram, Hollowponds Solo Sagas. I have a website where I have a newsletter. So every Saturday I send out a newsletter, which is basically my meandering thoughts and trying to be funny. And so I write, and I'm also on. So you can find me on Drive-Thru RPG. Is all my supplements if you'd like to send me some money. Send me some money.
Give our people a piece of advice about how you stay motivated and why you feel it's important to put. I mean, anyone who can do something on the regular, whether it's post a YouTube video or do a newsletter every week, is so. I tell people who want to be writers, just write. Don't worry about the quality. Get into the habit. So, can you give us some motivation for people out there?
So it's writing. So my ex-wife wanted to be a writer, and I tried to just say to her, as long as you're writing, you are a writer. Nobody has to read it. You don't have to be published. You just need to write consistently. And so I think it's setting yourself a goal and a deadline and being honest to it. If you don't reach it, don't punish yourself. So one of the key things you don't want to do is punish yourself for not reaching something, but you want to endeavor to reach it. Make it a realistic goal that you can realistically reach in a reasonable period of time, and just set it. And so that's what I do. And so I do 3 videos a week. I edit them. I push them out ahead when I write. So the writing I've done, I always set myself a goal. I've been writing small little trifolds to help players, to give little bits of advice on various different aspects like oracles and drama clocks and how to begin and how to solo any game and bits to take out. But it's all down to the motivation comes from realizing what you love to do and doing it. If you're not motivated to do it, you should probably take a step back, think about what you're doing, and is this really a thing that you're loving? So it's like going to the gym. If you don't like doing the Stairmaster and you find it hard to get into the gym, then don't do the Stairmaster. Do something else. If you don't like writing, then maybe that's not the thing for you. Maybe something else, maybe haikus or poems or something that's more short tail is the thing for you. And be willing to change and explore. It's a big, long life.
Writing,
you don't want to.
yeah. Writing
You don't want
begets
to put
writing
yourself.
too, even if it's just a
Yeah,
little. I write a little bit every day. Sometimes it could just be a couple ideas that I jot down. Other times I go crazy and write, I can write 5,000 words in 2 days, just because something fresh. So
yeah,
I like the fact that you have this discipline. I tell people, Jim knows the story because I was writing every day in the blog. Jim reached out and says, "Hey, you want to write for us?" And so I tell people, you can't just walk in and be a writer. You got to get a body of work. And so what you're doing is really cool stuff with the YouTube channel and your newsletter. So I know I'm hooked. I have you on my subscribe feed. So
Yeah, I'm inspired.
thank you very much.
I love it. In fact, I was just jotting down notes because I'm working on getting back to my fiction writing because I've been spending so much time being the project manager. I was like, okay, I need to scratch that itch and get back to my writing. And I'm thinking about like, oh, do I do a blog? Do I do a Patreon? Do I do all this other blah 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 blah? And I'm like, oh, even though I can't sell my Captain's Log stories, I could just start Captain's Log stories and just make it
Yeah,
for my for my blog viewers or my Patreon, like whatever. I don't know what it looks like yet, but I was like, oh yeah, I mean, literally, I've got that in my head. I can do that right now, and
and you'll use it. You'll use it at some point in the future. If you do that, you're going to be like, oh, I remember I wrote out that hilarious story. Let me just drag it into this, whether it's Star Trek or not, right?
Yeah, it's all practice.
yeah.
And I think that's something that writers and solo gamers sometimes maybe don't like to hear that word, right? It's like you got to practice, right? Just like a musician or an artist or whatever. Like writing is an art, so you got to practice every day, or as frequently as you are able to. Right? It doesn't have to be every day, but you got to keep at it to get better. So.
So one of the first things I started doing was that newsletter, which was at the beginning of the year. And to begin with, it's difficult. What am I going to write? And then you get used to it, and then you begin to flow, and you can just edit down. And so it is down to that practice, and just the repetition is the key. Yep. But it's the same for everything. It's like because I go to the gym, and so I've done. I used to do bodybuilding, but it's people don't. It's boring. You do the same thing over and over and over again, and that's where results come from.
That's right.
There's no magic shortcut. There's no magic gateway to anything. You have
10,000 hours.
That's it.
10,
that's it. That's what it is. It's just that. It's the and sneak it in wherever you can. Particularly with storytelling, anywhere you can sneak in, telling someone a story, and formulating. Put it in. Great stories. If you have children, you don't have to read a story. You can make a story up.
Start with Instagram. 100-word stories every day with a picture of what you saw is still writing people to do that. Awesome. Well, Peter, I hope you come back on our show because I think I have a feeling that you have a lot of good storytelling advice to add. I want to appreciate. I always give fans the love. That continuing conversations actually started out by fans for fans. So it's really refreshing to have you on there for gratitude. My gratitude is actually going to go to you today. That's my gratitude today, is because any fan who produces and shows other people how to do it is inspiring to me. It's going to be inspiring to people who listen to this. And so just keep it up for all our super fans out there who are doing amazing stuff. And how about you, Peter? What's your gratitude? And then we'll go out with Jim.
So there's so much gratitude that I could give, but I'm going to give to one person who just this morning there's a YouTuber called Trent who makes who's Australian, who makes terrain, and I used to make lots of terrain and do tabletop battles, but some of the videos that he's been doing a daily blog. He's challenged himself to do a daily blog, and the day he doesn't put one out, he's going to just delete the channel and delete all the videos and delete all of it as the motivator. But some of the things he said, particularly he released a book that is just photos of his miniatures and just to do. And so I'd like to give gratitude to him and his courage to keep the creative life and to keep, because it's difficult. You have to pay bills and you have to do various other things, but he keeps his creative life. So I'm very thankful for people like Trent who have that creative life and that creativity.
That's awesome, and my gratitude is to the fans and to you, Peter, for you and everybody like you who are taking all the different solo RPGs out there, not just Captain's Log, but just all of them out there, and being inspired and being creative and making stories, but not only making stories and being satisfied with it, but you're sharing them with the world, right? You're sharing them with other people. You're putting it out there. You're saying, look at this cool stuff that you can do with this hobby, right? Like all these cool games that are out there. Look what you can do. You can get creative. You can have fun. You can do all sorts of amazing things. And we need more of that in the world. We need more creativity. We need more fun stuff in the world just to counteract all the other stuff that's happening right now. So I am grateful for you doing that, and of course grateful for the fans who are still, I mean, like folks like you know, you talk about Captain's Log and people get excited about it, and then they can go find it, right? And then they can use it, and it's just a nice little circle. And it's just like what, you know, Michael and I have been talking about for years and years and years. To any game, not just our game, but like other games out there, you know, you got to build it one fan at a time, and you never know who's going to be watching your stuff and go, oh boy, Peter does some really cool videos. I wonder if I could do that. It's like, oh, I could do that, because why not, right? It's just so inspiring to see that you're giving back to the hobby, and it's just kind of a recursive loop, and it's just really cool to see. So thank you, and thank you for being on the show. Really appreciate you being here and sharing your story.
Thank you. Thank you for watching me, and thank you for inviting me. Just say that.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And have a safe move too. Catch you in another continent. Okay.
Yes. Awesome.
All right. IDIC.
All right. Live long and prosper, y'all. Be safe. We'll see you.